I'm Alcazar Duarte. I'm a Mexican-British photographer. And last year I decided to undertake a photography project in Cyprus. I was inspired by the words of my friend Anna, a colleague and classmate from Central St. Martin's, who taught me or told me that Cyprus was not only or is not only a holiday destination. She taught me about the very complex history of her country, and she told me about the many tribulations and uncertainties with which Cypriots live today. Shortly after I arrived into Cyprus, Anna, her dad Solonas, and myself went into a little day trip. Solonas had offered to show me what was his family home, the same home that he had to abandon back in 1974 when the conflict erupted in the island and many people had to abandon their homes and become refugees in their own country. Anna told me that her dad likes to do this from time to time. When people go and visit, that he shows them the house, but that he does this also to see it himself, to see if everything is okay with the house and if the house is even still there. On our way there, the area has changed so much since the last time he's been there that we need to ask for directions to get there. As soon as we get there, there's this little house with a vast piece of land in its backyard. And as he's telling us of all the plans that the family had for this piece of land, a car just parks beside it and a man comes out of it. It turns out to be the new occupant of the house. He's very friendly and he invites us in for some tea or coffee, to what we agreed. It is very important that I say this. Solonas has been outside the house many times, but he hasn't been inside since 1974, when he was forced to flee really quickly and leave everything behind, his hometown, his house. He lost everything. So we're inside, and as soon as we're inside, the man points us out a beam across the living room, like saying to Solonas, look, I've been keeping up the house, I've been taking care of it. I noticed on one of the walls there's a photo with two teenage girls in it, and I asked him if these are his daughters, to what he says yes. And in his little bit of broken English, like mine, he tries to explain that they are both in college now and that they were both born in that house. A few seconds after, his wife comes from inside the house. And in the look in her face is this kind of confusion and even fear from us. I can almost read the questions going through her mind. Why are we there? Do we mean any trouble? Recrimination? We're offered 3 times coffee, but the coffee never arrives. And the wife starts making a phone call on her mobile, looking for a neighbor who might be able to help us with some translation back and forth. After about 5 minutes, Anna starts getting really nervous, and she tells me that she's really worried that her dad is going to start crying at any minute, that we should go. So we leave, and as we're leaving, there's this little orange tree beside the main entrance of the house. Solonas almost immediately recalls playing when he was a little boy under the shadow of that tree. And so I offer if I can take a picture with him beside the tree. So I take one picture, and it's really badly exposed. So I have a second attempt, thinking that this would be my way of thanking him for sharing his story with me. But it's still really bad picture, so I have a third attempt. By then, I'm completely aware of how uncomfortable and distressful this situation is for everyone present, so I desist. Back into the car, Anna asks her dad if he's not angry. If he's not angry for having been forced to lose everything, for leaving his house, for losing everything and becoming a refugee in his own country. To what he says that it is not, or he's not angry with the new occupant of the house. He's angry with both their governments for putting regular people in this an impossible situation. So the situation today in Cyprus. The problem with modern Cyprus starts back in colonial times when it becomes a British colony, all around the 1800s up to 1960, when it becomes an independent republic. By then, there are deeply rooted differences between the 2 ethnic groups that populate the islands, the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots. In 1974, the island finally is turned apart when the Greek government decides to engineer a coup d'etat, and the Turkish government decides to retaliate by taking over the northern part of the island. The island then is divided in north and south, and it has remained divided ever since. In the north, you have the Turkish Cypriots, and the government is not recognized. In the south, you have the Greek Cypriots, and the government is an independent republic. It's recognized internationally, and it became part of the European Union in 2008. Today, the situation is stable, but there is still a sense of division. Even though the borders were completely open by 2008 when they became part of the European Union, you have to present a passport when crossing from side to side. So all along the border, there's an area called the buffer zone. This area doesn't belong to anyone. It's a neutral area, and it's administered by the United Nations up to today. The buffer zone crosses the capital of the country called Nicosia, and it is in this buffer zone that I found a place called Home for Cooperation. So they are a community group that brings young people together from both communities. When I first met them, they're a group of really young, committed, passionate peace advocates who constantly are creating situations for both communities to come together and have some kind of intercultural exchange and create some kind of trust between each other through music, sports, arts, food. It wasn't until after I met Home for Cooperation that I realized and started drafting possible landscapes. At the time, what I was doing, I was taking photos of the earth and the sky all over the country, and I was placing them side by side in a way where you couldn't be able to tell which side was which side. No north, no south. I was enjoying the fact that the viewer could do their own sense of narrative or could create their own sense of narrative by combining these images. But it wasn't quite working, and I couldn't put my finger on why was this, until I figured out that it was because all the images were taken by the same person, me, and that on top of it, I'm a foreigner. So this is when I realized that I wanted to make a community project and invite people to make photographs of the country. While I was in Cyprus, I discovered that there was a big group of Instagrammers. And I thought this is a good way of reaching young people all over the country without having to have loads of funding. As we know, Instagram is a really good way to share images, but it could be really, really banal. So it became almost like a challenge for me. I started wondering if it could be used for something more meaningful, if it could be used for an arts communities project. So then going back to this idea of the earth, the land, this sky that we all share, I decided that the pictures would have to have some sort of horizon. And if they were placed together side by side, what they would do, they would conform this continuous, uninterrupted horizon in which north, east, south, and west would become completely undiscernible. So back in London, I contacted Home for Cooperation and I said to them, look, I can make this initiative possible. I can open the account, make the first contacts, make the first posts. I need your help in spreading the word. So we drafted together this poster and they helped me by printing it out and putting it up in the cafe. They even distributed it in their own channels that they use for their community activities. So this was really exciting. Then I contacted a journalist that I met there when I was in Cyprus. Her name is Melissa Heckers. And I asked her if she would be interested in becoming a guest contributor. This would mean a takeover for a week. And she would make posts directly from our account for about a week with a horizon of Cyprus and with a little story about how, when, where the photo was taken. Melissa agreed. She's very kind. And after about a week, I asked her if she had a friend who would be interested in doing the same. And then I asked her friend if she would have another friend, and then another friend. And this is how the little peace chain started. I created the hashtag possible landscapes because I thought not everyone is going to be able or want to commit for a week to post daily photographs, but still maybe they want to take part. So they all need to do is to use the hashtag, and the photos would appear in the general feed of the project. The very, very first milestone of the project was when we were contacted by Pespan, is his Instagram name, completely independently and outside of our immediate contact list. This in a way meant that we were kind of gaining some kind of a life of its own. The project was creating a life of its own in a way, and this was also very exciting. I asked Pespan after his takeover of a week if he had friends of his that would be interested, and then I asked his friends if they would have friends of theirs. And I remember thinking, if we last a month, that would be amazing. But now, 9 months later and 1,500 images afterwards, we're reaching both communities. I have to mention, each community participates in a very, very different way. So I feel that, for example, the Turkish Cypriot community, they're a little bit more shy, they're a little bit more cautious, and they're just using the hashtag. So what I'm doing is I'm reposting the photos in the main feed, giving them the credit with their username. It is my hope that eventually they become more directly involved with the project. But for now, nevertheless, it is very important to acknowledge that both communities are kind of engaged and contributing. So now the plans are that I'm looking for funding. I would like to organize an exhibition that tours around the country in different community centers. I'm organizing with Home for Cooperation a big installation event with blow-up images of all the images we've been given. And the idea is that when we place them together, they would be going in and out of the buffer zone in Nicosia. I also want to make a little photo book and the earnings to be donated for Home for Cooperation. I'm also looking for other organizations. So as last week, we were confirmed that we will be collaborating with an organization in Bosnia. Their name is the Post-Conflict Research Center. They are in Sarajevo. So we're going to have Possible Landscape Sarajevo, which is extraordinary and I feel really, really fortunate about. I will also contact another organization in Northern Ireland. They bring together young people from both the Protestant and Catholic communities, and their name is Karimila. So the momentum for a project like this can only happen, I think, for having many people knowing about the project, for many people participating in it, because it can only become meaningful through the cumulative effect of the joint voice of all its participants. I'm not naive, and I don't think that Possible Landscapes is going to have a deep impact in the process of deep peace building. Peace building being so complex, so arduous, so difficult in so many ways. But it's been demonstrated that if young people are being given the space to meet each other, people who are in opposing sides are given the space to meet each other, they realize that all those differences are not as important. Preconceptions, misconceptions about each other diminish. It is because they realize how much more in common we have as human beings, but also if the differences don't disappear, they realize that they can actually be respected as if they would respect the differences in their own community. So in a way for me, Possible Landscapes is about this space in which I hope that Cypriots can see their country as a shared, common space. I don't hope that my friend Anna would ever become best friends with one of the daughters of the new occupant of what it was her family home. But I hope that if given the space, they would share with each other the many wonderful things they both have today in their lives, in this country that they both call home, because this country is still in peace. And this conflict that is still there, somehow would become less important, diminish, and recede. For me, as a photographer, words fail me. And I think that in places where words have failed, a space for a different kind of dialogue needs to be created. A space in which an almost seamless visual conversation can take place. And for me, that's what Possible Landscapes is. So thank you.